right, good evening, everybody. Welcome. Adequate notice of this meeting as required by the Open Public Meetings Act was provided through the posting, mailing, and filing of the annual notice of regularly scheduled meetings of the Town Council on December 12, 2023. The notice was on that date posted on the bulletin board of the municipal building, provided to the Westfield Leader and the Star Ledger, and filed with the clerk of the town of Westfield. Ms. Lushing, you have a roll call.
Mayor Brindle?
Here.
Council members Haggood?
Here.
Dardia?
Here.
Domagala?
Here.
Kiefer?
Here.
Saunders?
Here.
Armento?
Here.
Contract?
Here.
Mackey?
Here.
Please rise for the invocation. Give my Councilman Dardia and remain standing for the salute.
As we gather here today to conduct the business of our community, we take a moment to reflect on unity and acknowledge the diversity of beliefs and perspectives. May we be guided by the principles of wisdom, compassion, and justice as we work together for the betterment of our community by listening with open hearts to understand each other with empathy and to make decisions that reflect the values we hold dear to us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Any comments, Jim?
I do. A couple of quick things, Mayor, if you don't mind. Just two items, really. One is about tax collection. Obviously, Thursday is February 1st. Exciting times in the tax office. So I just want to remind the public that there is a 10-day grace period, but of course, the 10-day, February 10th is on a Saturday. So we then actually count Monday as the 10th day. So anything that comes in after Monday, February 12th, is treated as delinquent, and therefore everyone should get their taxes in. We have online payment opportunities. We have in person. We have the after-hours drop box, both at the police department and outside the door here. But if something comes in the drop box after 4:30 on Monday the 12th, it's considered delinquent. So you get a couple extra days, which is good. And just a reminder, the Finance Committee knows this from discussing our budget process already. We had excellent tax collection in this town always, and really one of the better years in 2023. So thank you to the residents for paying their taxes on time and paying them regularly. So other thing is the Conservation Center. We have a new Public Works Director, as you know. We have done the recycling opportunity hours during the week, Monday through Friday, 9 to 12, which has worked very well. Past few years we've done that in January. We also have our Saturday hours. In January it's every Saturday, mostly for Christmas trees and other events, other debris. We talked to Richie Eubanks, who manages the center in Public Works, and Craig Gibson, new director. They both would like to continue the Monday through Friday hours in February and March up until the center opens, which is March 21st. So that will continue February and March, 9 to 12, Monday through Friday. And the Saturdays that were published, which is 2 Saturdays in February and 1 Saturday in March, will continue to be open on those Saturdays. The second Saturday in March is the opening of the center for the season. So it's a great service to extend. We have a lot of people that would like to recycle. And again, I want to thank Craig and Richie for continuing to provide that opportunity. It is a staffing issue, but it works very well, and it's something we like to continue. So anyway, the center opens up on March 21st between now and then, Monday through Friday, 9 to 12 for recycling, and 2 Saturdays in February and 1 Saturday in March for normal collections and debris. That's it.
Excellent. Thank you,
Thanks.
Jim. And good evening, everybody. I do want to thank everybody for being here, for those of us in person and online. Just as a reminder, public comment is only accepted in person, and we're live streaming for Facebook, and you can always see the replay on Facebook, YouTube, and TV 36. Just a few little updates for the evening and comments on tonight's agenda. First, I want to welcome some downtown businesses. Several of us up here, Kiefer and Linda and Councilman Contract, all attended the expansion of Club Pilates and the grand ribbon cutting on East Broad Street on Saturday, which is great. And what was even greater news is the story behind the expansion and how far we've come over the last few years. When the adjacent business closed, the owner of Club Pilates immediately jumped in and renewed an expanded lease for the adjacent store. So there was absolutely zero vacancy between the time the previous business closed and Club Pilates expanded, now making them the largest Club Pilates on the East Coast. So it's just a really, I think, I know I've said it multiple times, but when you have current business owners who are reinvesting or doubling down on their investment in town, it says a great story about their confidence in the prospects of our town. There are also some other openings. Hopefully, if you guys haven't been to 2nd Street, I hope you'll stop by. It's in the former Ann Taylor selfie station location. And Broadway Italia, which is a new Italian jewelry store. And then there's several others that are about to open, including Hummus Republic, Faherty, Rush Bowls, Small Town Play Cafe, and of course, the one we're all very excited about, May's Cocktails and Cucina in the North Avenue train station spot, which should be open late spring. I do want to remind everybody, February is Black History Month, and there are many upcoming events, all of which will be hosted by the Westfield Memorial Library and a great collaboration with the MLK Association of Westfield. On this Saturday at 1 o'clock, we'll be kicking off the event. I'll be joined by Liz Wolfe, who's president of the MLK Association, Library Director Alan McGinley, and other local representatives. And there's going to be lots of different events and exhibits through February. And if any of you had gone to the African American History event exhibit that was in the Rialto last year, it's now in the library through the month of February. So you can go to the library and check out all the events, but it really is going to be a great month of celebration of Black History Month. And I do want to just tell everybody, I think after we had our reorg meeting in January, and I think all of you hopefully know by now that there's 4 committees comprised of various members of the council, and those committees have been formed and they're starting to meet. There's finance, public safety, public works, and code review. And they're meeting regularly. I think the budget is in full swing, which Finance Committee, which I think Councilman Hapgood's going to speak about, and public safety, public works, and code review will all be meeting in the coming days and weeks. So I'm actually going to ask Councilman Hapgood, as chair of the Finance Committee, if she'll just give a little brief update about what the Finance Committee is up to.
Thank you, Mayor. So it is a good time to give a quick update on where we are in the budget process. I mentioned it last meeting. We've now had a weeknight meeting. We've had a Saturday morning meeting, not a Saturday night meeting.
That would be terrible.
Yeah, exactly. And we had our 2023 budget and review meeting in this room last Tuesday night. Well, thank you very much to Councilman Damagala and Kiefer for joining the committee this year and getting up to speed quickly, because it's a lot to learn. Municipal finance is definitely its own animal. And I also wanted to thank everyone in the public who was able to make it for the 2023 budget and review meeting. We had our largest turnout ever, which was very exciting. Lots of good questions from the audience, which we welcome, because people don't always understand exactly how the municipal budget process works. And so we were very happy to answer those questions. It was not live streamed, but you can tune in and see that presentation by going onto the website. It's westfieldnj.gov / budget 2024 budget. So if you want to take a look, but if you ever have any questions that aren't answered by that presentation or otherwise in information that we're posting on the website, I would really encourage you to reach out to any of us on the Finance Committee. The new members may still need to defer to Councilman Conchact or me, because they're still getting up to speed. But we're here and right now interested in getting your questions and also seeking input for the 2024 budget process, which continues Thursday night with the tax offices and Maureen's office, the clerk. So, and then those will continue through the end of the month, and we'll be getting ready for taking our recommendation for the budget back here to this council.
Very exciting.
It is. I love it.
I know you do. So in terms of tonight's agenda, I just want to highlight a few key legislative items. The first of which is an ordinance related to the work being done by the Finance Policy Committee on this year's sewer fee. And I know there's been some chatter on social media. I think there's been a little bit of confusion. So I'm actually going to ask Jim Gilday to get up and provide a little context for tonight's ordinance.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. So tonight is the It's ordinance on first reading, which means it's an ordinance being introduced, and this ordinance sets the not to exceed, or otherwise known as the top of the range for what the sewer fees could be charged. This is not unusual. You first do an ordinance to set the not to exceed prices. We do this for pool rates. We do it for building department rates. We do it for sewer fee from time to time. And you do it obviously to create more flexibility as we move forward in the future. I think it's important to note that the rates that are in this ordinance are not the rates that are going to be set for 2024. They're just the not to exceed prices that are being set to provide the council with flexibility going forward in future years. So again, the Finance Committee has discussed this. Every year, the sewer fee is set in early February to allow the tax office to finalize the bills and send out. There's statutory compliance to have the bills due. And of course, our first bill is due to the sewer authority in April, which is why we send the bills out and they're due in April. So again, that's the ordinance tonight. It's not the actual rates for 24. It's just the not to exceed prices in the various categories. And the committees will be talking about the actual rates for 24, and probably the next meeting, February 13th, we'll actually have a resolution that would set the rates for 2024. And right now, there's been some discussion, of course, subject to change, that for a single family home, for example, the rate might be in the neighborhood of $20 additional for 2024.
For the year.
For the year. So that's just a little over $1 a month, or close to $2 a month. So that's the kind of idea we're talking about at this rate. So at this point, again, subject to the final decisions and the council and the committee recommendations. So again, much smaller increase than the rate that's in the ordinance now. It just gives the council flexibility, but that's what's being talked about right now. So.
And Jim, can you just mention, and I know we talked about it, a lot of people aren't aware of the subsidy that we provide and what happens in other municipalities. So maybe you just provide a little bit of context, which also speaks to why the rates are, not to exceed rates, is just a reinforcement to remind the public how much of the sewer bill is actually being subsidized by the municipality.
Sure. So our sewer fee was put into place in 2012, and it was put into place and is being charged by property tax classification, which is the type of property you own, not based upon your use. And that's been a discussion we've had for many, many years, and we're trying to work towards that because that's what we feel is the fairer model. But it's not as easy as people think. It's very complicated. And so we charge a flat rate. And we've always tried to, some years it's different depending on what the bill is and what we're able to do each year at budget, but we try to subsidize roughly 50% or less any given year so that the resident is only getting really half the bill. The other half of the bill is borne by the budget. And that was decided back in 2012. We try to carry that through, even through to today. So a $20 increase in the single-family homeowners this year will continue that subsidy in that realm. But just to give you some example, sewer rates are charged all over the state, and they're charged in many different ways. Sometimes the sewer utility that's collecting and treating the water will actually bill the residents themselves, very much like your PSE&G or your American Water or your Elizabethtown Gas is billing you directly at your home. That's not what happens in Westfield. We're a member of the Raleigh Valley Sewage Authority with many other communities, and they do not bill directly. They pass the bill to the communities, and then the town has to either do what it wants to do. But the subsidy is unique in the sense that most places bill for your full freight or your full use. So for example, in the ordinance tonight on the single family homes, $565 is the not to exceed price that's listed in there. That's not what we're going to charge in 2024, but that's probably not far off from what the actual rate might be for an average assessed home in Westfield if we were charging them the full freight. So we're, 50%, 45%, 52%, depending on the year. But it's not a small subsidy. And we've done that for now since 2012 in some way, shape, or form. We're continuing that, but all the while, and this new committee members have learned this, and the council, of course, will be discussing this in the future, we're trying to move towards a user-based model so that it becomes fair, but there's a lot of complications to that. A lot more education needs to be done internally and externally. So that's probably a few years away, but we're working towards that.
Great, thanks.
Sure.
So to recap, we received our largest percent increase from RVSA ever, 8.3%. If we kept the subsidy the same, it would equate to an increase of $20 per household for the year, about a little over $1 a month.
Yes, that's correct.
Right? And we are looking to see how we could move to a usage-based model, which is fair, so people pay exactly what they use, but it's fairly complicated and will take, that's a long process.
You said it much better than I did, yes.
Got it, okay.
Thank
Just
you.
wanted to make sure everybody understood. Thank you. And then just lastly, on tonight's agenda, we have two ordinances on second reading related to financial operations within Public Works. One that amends the existing ordinance to properly create the position of Assistant Director of Public Works, and one that amends the existing ordinance to amend a few DPW salary ranges. And both of these ordinances are intended to prepare for the reorganization of the DPW under our new director, Craig Gibson. So with that, let's get on to tonight's agenda. Ms. Lawshe, are there any advertised hearings?
Yes, Mayor, there are two advertised hearings tonight, starting with General Ordinance Number 2024-01, an ordinance to amend the code of the Town of Westfield, Chapter 2, Section 89.1. Anyone wishing to be heard on General Ordinance Number 2024-01, please come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. Seeing no one, Mayor, you may close the hearing.
This hearing is closed.
Next is General Ordinance Number 2024-02, an ordinance to amend the code of the Town of Westfield, Chapter 2, Administration, Article 2, Town Officers and Employees, Division 3, Personnel Positions and Salary Schedule, Section 2-1228 Schedule. Anyone wishing to be heard on General Ordinance Number 2024-02, please come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. See no one, Mayor, you may close the hearing.
This hearing is closed. Councilman Hapgood, please move for the adoption of General Ordinance Number 2024-01.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move for the adoption of General Ordinance Number 2024-01 on second reading, an ordinance to amend the code of the Town of Westfield, Chapter 2, Section 89.1.
May I have a second? So by Councilman Mackey. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Councilmembers Hapgood,
Yes.
Dardia,
Yes.
Domagala,
Yes.
Kiefer,
Yes.
Saunders,
Yes.
Armento,
Yes.
Contract, Mackey, Mayor Brindle.
Yes, this motion is carried.
And I'd also like to move for the adoption of General Ordinance Number 2024-02 on second reading, an ordinance to amend the code of the Town of Westfield, Chapter 2, Administration, Article 2, Town Officers and Employees, Division 3, Personnel Positions and Salary Schedule, Section 2-12.28 Schedule.
May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman, who said that?
Domagala.
Domagala.
It's all right.
I'm sorry, any discussion? Please call the roll.
Councilmembers Hapgood,
Yes.
Dardia,
Yes.
Domagala,
Yes.
Kiefer,
Yes.
Saunders,
Yes.
Armento,
Yes.
Contract, Mackey, Mayor Brindle.
Yes, this motion is carried. May I have a motion to approve the minutes from the Town Council Conference and regular meetings of January 16, 2024? So moved by Councilman Contract, second.
Second.
Second by Councilman Hapgood. Any discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
This motion is carried. Now it's time for open discussion by citizens. Anyone may come up to the microphone and speak to the council on any subject on which we have jurisdiction. Please state your name and address for the record, and please limit your comments to 5 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor, Town Council. I was privileged to attend last week's budget meeting, and I want to thank
Mr. Goodman, could you
Oh,
please give your name?
322 or end the circle, sorry. Stephen Goodman. I was pleased to attend the last week's meeting with the budget with Linda and Jim, and I learned a lot about the $15 million surplus. That money, as we know, we can utilize in a smart way to lower property taxes and to make this town better and more efficient. Let me remind you, Mayor, Town Council, many of us were never given a golden parachute on leaving or retiring from our employer. Let me remind you also, Mayor and Town Council, most of us do not work for Goldman Sachs, Google, or a high-powered, prestigious, high-paying firm. As costs continue to rise, not only do families with school children, but many retired and empty nesters realize how important your control over the costs and budgeting really is. The affordability of Westfield cannot be justified on an apparition of some senior apartments for the elderly. As we know, they will cost even more than staying put in your own house. While we rely on you to deliver a comprehensive, balanced, equitable budget, you should also rely on input from your citizens to which projects should be given priority and greater emphasis. and the reduction of property taxes and the elimination of layering costs in addition to those taxes should be given our first priority as it affects all of our citizens. The sewer tax is just one small issue. The addendum 5% tax on the school budget is another. With the proposed One Westfield Place and the addition of 1,000 new apartments, there are many doubters that our costs will be controlled. Their increase in infrastructure, in personnel costs, and will obviously go up, along with the demand for additional educational space and resources from newly entering students. Where will the firehouse on the north side be located? Is this to be, as Jim Galdea said, a satellite? How will its multi-million-dollar costs be funded? We know the school budget always gets funded, but by whom and how? That's how we want it figured out now. We want an atmosphere of integrity, responsibility, respect, reason, choice, and transparency. Much of the town council was replaced in the past election because of these issues. But let me remind this mayor and town council that good people can sometimes make very bad mistakes. It is important not just for you to review your plans yourself, but react and interact with townspeople to create a check and balance of any foreseen miscues. Boeing Corporation was once a very well-respected company. They had the best planners, the best architects, the best builders. Yet, because of several oversights, two of their planes crashed and killed hundreds of people, and even more recently, a side segment of their door covering fell off the plane, narrowly avoiding a catastrophe. Reinspection of many of these planes showed additional loose or missing bolts holding their fuselage together. Mayor Brindle, let our town go. Let's go back and reinspect the One Westfield Place project. Let's go back and renegotiate some of the contracts that many citizens feel is a bad deal for Westfield. I also believe the citizens of this town should have a major say which of these projects in the budget take precedence for surplus. I cannot understand why we are fast-tracking Quimby Street and Squiggle Way, which are obviously not top priorities. Why are we, the taxpayers, paying layered costs to additionally fund the school budget and sewer costs when the pilot programs should already be doing this? Let's not allow our bolts to fly off our town. Rather than risk disharmony, you have the ability to bring this town together by a new exchange of ideas with your citizens that we really didn't have before. Let us be your second pair of eyes. Just like Boeing Corporation, it doesn't take too much to discriminate between travesty and responsibility. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Tom White. I live at 222 Edgewood Avenue. I'm here to talk about the problems we have with auto theft and break-ins, and I know you're all very concerned about it. I sense an increased attention to the subject and more support for our fine police. But I think we need to think outside of the box. I'm concerned, number one, it's little things that are going on. It's sometimes when I think about the police and the job they have to do, almost at night, it's like they're chasing mice in the dark. I mean, they need more support, and it needs to be coming out of Trenton. I think part of our problem is underage kids that are coming in and stealing, and there aren't laws that pin them down. Have an idea. It's out of the box. Maybe it's good, maybe it's not. What if the town council came up with a suggested law and send it to Trenton with our legislators? The law could be something as simple as anyone found guilty of stealing a motor vehicle or parts of it would immediately lose their license for a period of time. This is all in addition to whatever laws are on the books, 2, 3, 4 years, whatever it is. If they're underage, when they become of age, they can't get a driver's license for a particular period of time. Anyone that loses their license or drives a car before they can get the license goes to jail for a month. What would happen? You might have people thinking a lot more seriously about breaking the law. If the law was valid, you supported it, you sent it to Trenton, and our reporters tracked the progress in Trenton, we could see what could happen. If they signed off on it, if they got Pennsylvania and New York to support it, you might have cooperation across the 3 states. It's more than just car theft. It's people commandeering cars with people in them, like up at Short Hills Mall. There was somebody, I believe, that was killed on South Orange Avenue with a theft. It's even more than that. Most of you haven't been around here that long. The president of one of the Exxon corporations was kidnapped and held for ransom, and I believe he was killed. That was prior to Exxon moving down to Texas. I did business in a previous career with a fellow that was kidnapped, held for ransom in a New York sewer for 10 days. It can happen here. I'd like you to think about it. I've got the suggestions down. Change them if you will, but we need to do more. We need to do more, and it's not a Westfield issue only, but we can start it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. My name is Tim Quagliarello. I live on 1060 Lawrence Avenue. I moved to Westfield last year. I left New York City, like many people, to post-pandemic to provide for a better life for my wife and children in a nice town with good schools and a manageable commute. It was everything that we had hoped for. However, we had no idea what we'd be exposed to shortly after we moved in. A month after we moved, there was a home invasion a few doors down. Similar house, similar alarm system. It was devastating for that family and for our community. What was so surprising about that particular case was that the alarm system went off and the thieves still entered the home. I remember discussing with my wife at the time, how could they be so brazen and confident not to be fazed by an alarm? Then I started to realize the scale of this issue and how personal it was becoming for my family. Numerous other instances started occurring one after the other. Someone coming on our property without permission, taking pictures of entries and exits and cameras. A group of 5 criminals trespassing on my property, attempting to gain entry to my house as they run from the police after having stolen a neighbor's car. Numerous high-speed car chases down our street in the middle of the night, including one on Father's Day morning that was so loud it woke our 3-year-old up on the backside of the house over her sound machine. And add in countless other break-ins and car thefts in our neighborhood given the proximity to 2022. My wife is scared, my children are scared about scary monsters coming into their house. What's more disconcerting is the response that we've gotten from policymakers. Everything we've heard as we looked into this deeper has been either there's nothing we can do about it, it's the laws of the state, vote when the time comes, or don't worry about it, don't be scared, they're just opportunistic thieves, just call the police and we'll take care of it. The only advice we get is to address the symptoms of the problem. Buy a cheaper car. Don't buy a BMW or Mercedes. Fortify your windows. Keep all your lights on. Light up your property like it's Friday Night Lights. Even a member of this council suggested we put bear traps around the house. Is this what it's come to in Westfield? Now, I understand there's a lot of what someone on this council called fatigue on this issue. But this circular discussion of it's the laws of the state and we're doing everything in our power lacks any accountability. And the residents of this town and the police who are charged with combating this issue are left out to dry. We're the ones who are fatigued. We're the ones who are up all night worried about it, and we're the ones who are desperate for change. And I'm here tonight because at this point we are desperate. And I know I speak for many because I hear a lot of their stories. I know the objective of the state is to focus on violent crime, and resources are focused on combating that as much as possible, particularly in those concentrated cities where it's most prevalent. But in so doing, this strategy has allowed this issue to get completely out of control. It should not be at the expense of other serious crimes, as it is now. After speaking with our state senators, one of the biggest issues I see is that the laws of the state are as lenient for car thefts as they are for those who break into homes. These should not be treated the same. A home invasion is a much more personal and dangerous crime. The laws for home break-ins and the ability to charge and keep criminals who do this must change and must change now. Car thefts aren't great, but a car is replaceable. What's not replaceable is our peace and sense of security at home. Home invasions or evasion attempts are becoming just as common as car thefts. I'm sure I don't have to tell this council the psychological impact of someone on your property trying to gain entry to your home on anyone, never mind a child. That, in my mind, is just as serious as a violent crime, not to mention the very real possibility of something violent happening. Every noise you hear after that, every creak in the floor, every gust of wind, every branch falling, is it happening to us? I mentioned attempts before because that's not being reported by the numbers we hear in these town halls, and I think they amplify the scale and severity of this issue. The status quo cannot continue. We cannot expect our police department to kill themselves every day just to keep crime lower than other towns. Another dozen license plate readers is not going to solve this issue. We feel helpless, and we have no power to stop it. And it's just a matter of when someone is going to get hurt or killed. Now, I'm not a politician, so I don't know who's coming up with these laws and who's standing in the way of changing them. If this is really an issue that's outside of your control, then we need help from our elected leaders to push the right legislators in your respective parties and to help us organize if you can't do it effectively. I can speak for my entire neighborhood, and I imagine all of Westfield and surrounding towns, when I say we're all ready and willing to call and write letters and make noise. My questions are, what specifically are you doing to prevent home invasions, and what specifically are we doing to make a change here? This council approves contracts for hundreds of thousands of dollars all the time. It seems sensible that we can perhaps hire a few more police officers for overnight shifts and put them at critical access points like Lawrence Avenue near 22. That would be a start. Thank you very much.
Anybody else?
Good evening, Carla Bonacci, 603 Lawrence Avenue. First, two issues I hope I can fit in the 5 minutes. First, I would like to thank the 4 new councilmen for acting quickly to address concerns of commuting residents about the poor construction safety conditions at the North Avenue train station public space where the utilities are being extended into the Maze restaurant. And I would like to thank them for having Jim Gildea, I believe, address these concerns quickly by having bike racks installed that at least isolate the sporadically placed construction materials and equipment located throughout the public space from the pedestrians and vehicles using the area to get to and from mass transit during their commuting days. As construction continues in this public space and in the future throughout the town, I look forward to the 4 councilmen continuing to add value by listening to the public and taking actions to have the town administration implement best practices when construction is occurring in pedestrian and vehicular areas of town. My second issue, Mayor, is at the first meeting of the new year, you stated that you would be accelerating the Quimby Street renovation. We are interested in why this would be advanced now and how this would be funded. This is not even the first project in the One Westfield Place deal, or is it even identified as being a required project? It's actually defined as a non-required project in the redevelopment agreement and in the public, it's not infrastructure finance agreement, public improvement finance agreement. So if this is being funded out of the surplus, then I believe there are better projects to prioritize and accelerate. For instance, maybe replacing the sidewalks on Broad Street, which is a major avenue of the downtown retail district. So again, I'm very curious how you're planning to fund this project and how you're dealing with the impacts in the One Westfield Place agreement, because per the exhibits, it's not required, and it's at the end of the project. Thank you.
Bob McNamara, 603 Lawrence Avenue. On Friday, in arguing in court in favor of the outrageous overreach, which is One Westfield Place, the town attorney, who is supposed to represent the town residents, used the term blighted in describing our town. Our town is not blighted, and to characterize it as such is a travesty. No town with a AAA bond rating is considered blighted. I would ask the town council to renounce that categorization of our town as being blighted and to pass a resolution to repeal the designation of our whole town as an area in need of rehabilitation. Thank you.
Rich Panikiewski, 233 Charles Street.
I'm sorry, what's your last name?
Panikiewski. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I came here tonight to learn a little bit about this sewer number that everybody seems to be talking about. And I did learn a little bit, but I'm still unclear about it. So I'm going to just voice my questions here. I'm not really here to, protest anything or make any suggestions or anything. But I am going to voice some questions, and I guess these questions really are for Jim. The 565 number, I'm just wondering where that number comes from, how they came up with that. We're being told that, well, that's a max number or whatever, but, how do you establish that number? How is that number established? RVSA hit the town of Westfield pretty hard this year, $4,899,122. It's a lot of money. As the mayor appropriately pointed out, it's an 8.25% increase. But back in 2018, we saw a 7.35% increase, and in 2019, we saw a 7.91% increase. And, if we learned anything from history, in 2020, the sewer rate was raised from 165 to 195 for single use, for residential. So that's $30. So again, congruent to my initial question about the 565, why didn't we just apply what we know from history, that $30 or $40 or $50, and apply that to the $245 that we're paying now? My other questions relate to when I look at the rates that are listed and compare them to the same ordinance last year, I see that the single-family rates are more than significantly doubled. It's almost 2.6%, 260% increase. The multifamily rates are double, a 2.0, and the commercial and industrial rates are far less than double. So once again, it seems like the burden of all of this cost is being put on the single-family use housing. And with almost 1,100 new apartments coming to town in the future, I think that should be a little bit of a concern. Thank you.
Anybody else? No, seeing none. I close this portion of the meeting, and actually, Jim, I'll ask you to address some of these, then I'm going to ask the chief to come and address some of the comments on auto thefts and break-ins. So which do you want to do that first? Jim, why don't we do that? Jim, do you want to address the questions that this gentleman just asked about the sewer fee?
Sure.
And maybe talk about Ms. Bonacci's, what she said was, what she thought was happening with the Maze utility issues and potentially Quimby Street.
Sure. So first on the sewer fee, the last speaker here, let me just figure out remember what he said here. So basically, as I said before, the ordinance tonight sets the not to exceed price. The 565 number actually was the rationale behind it. So the current rates are 245. We know that we have roughly a 50% subsidy. So that number was doubled. And I talked to some utility companies that do this kind of work, and they basically recommended that there should be a percentage added to that if you were charging the full freight, which we're not. But if there was, you have to add in a percentage about maintenance, infrastructure repairs, those type of things, which is 15%. So it's the current rate, 245, of all the different categories, doubled plus 15%. That's how the maximum number has been achieved in the ordinance. As we said before, that's not expected to be done. And the original ordinance to creating the sewer fee in 2012 started the sewer fee for a single-family home at 170. So doubling that would be 340. We're not there. It has not doubled. We're at 245 right now. And if indeed things move forward on February 13th, as been discussed so far, that would go to 265 potentially, or whatever the council does. So we're still not even at double for single-family home rate. And the commercial rates, on a percentage basis, may not have gone up as much, but from a dollar perspective, have gone up much more than the single-family homes or apartments or condos or townhouses. And that was done, obviously, because we have a lot of, commercial use is usually much larger than a single-family home or condo or townhouse. So on a dollar-for-dollar basis, the commercial rates have gone up dramatically over the past number of years. I guess, I don't know that I answered all the questions on the sewer fee, but I think there was just some of the things you mentioned, the doubling the fee, which is not true for homes or other properties, and the rate, how the maximum rate has been achieved for this ordinance, which again only sets the maximum, is not going to be the rate for 2024. On the comments about Mays, about, well, the utility work that's going on to get utilities to Mays from the street. There were some concerns brought to my attention about the construction going on. So of course, the great news is we have our parking director has been out there every day working with the company, putting up barricades, helping with cones. They're doing some of it on their own, of course. We've been bolstering it as necessary to make sure it's a safe area, but it's been in very good shape for the past few weeks. And that project expects to be another 2 weeks to go, and that'll be done, if not sooner. So that'll be over very soon. But I think that's, it was brought to my attention, and I was out there myself, frankly, 2 weeks ago to see it myself. So, the barricades and cones have been up to make sure that the pedestrians and walkers and drivers are safe. One other thing to mention, we made a point to make sure that the construction company doing the work, except for what might be happening this week on a limited basis because PSE&G is coming to do some work. The utility work is from the street and or the vault. There's a vault, PSE&G vault, in the parking lot underground. Construction company must connect the utilities to the vault. Only PSE&G, because they own the vault, can connect that to their vault. So they'll be out there doing some work, and there'll be portions of the lot closed for a couple hours a day. But we made a point to make sure that the operational lot is operational every day and after the daytime, so that for at night everything's buttoned up to make sure that people can pick up their people and drop people off to the train and so forth. So it's worked out very well. I haven't really received any complaints about that. I think those are the two things, right?
Quimby Street.
Oh, Quimby. So in Quimby's, so that one right now, obviously there's, as she mentioned, talking about accelerating that project. Right now, there's discussion with Streetworks about, it is correct that in the agreements, it is one of the public improvements that's listed. And right now it's not a quote unquote required improvement, but it's still already been, the money's been authorized for that project like all the other public improvements. And so we'll be talking to them about doing it, but that public improvement would act the same way as other public improvements, where Streetworks is the general contractor doing the work, and then money that would be paid back to them for any public improvements, including Quimby, we pay back at a later time with pilot money or other funds the towns may have. But that's how it's designed, and that's how it right now it is envisioned to work. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Before we move to the police chief, Tom, do you want to address the comment about what happened in court on Friday?
You saw me champing at the bit. Yes, Mayor. I mean,
So-
I will say I've known Mr. McNamara for a long time, and the point almost doesn't matter, but because the press is here and because we're taking minutes, I just wanted to make sure the record is correct. And I'm sure, I don't put any ill intent on Mr. McNamara. I'm sure he thought he heard me use the term blighted, but never once during the argument on Friday did I use the term blighted to describe the town of Westfield. I don't have any particular problem with the term blighted, but just for the record, I never use that term to describe the town of Westfield.
Thank you. Chief, do you want to come up and address some of the auto theft issues? I do want to mention that Chief Badalore and I had a meeting with the Union County prosecutor and some of his detectives on Friday, I think it was. And I'll just say a couple things to both Mr. White and, I'm sorry, Tim. I couldn't say it correctly. Let me just say that regarding legislation and laws needed, agree with you 100%. We are actually already working and have proposed laws, including reaching out to a mayor in Monmouth County. I think there's some issues about charging juveniles as adults who are repeat offenders, which is one of the big problems. And I completely agree with you that home invasions needed to be treated more aggressively than auto thefts. And that's something that we've been talking to legislators about too. So, but I'll let Chief Badalore address specifically kind of his perspective on what's being done.
Well, I'm not sure there's much more I can say than what I gave in my statement at the last council meeting. I can tell you that this police department is aggressively policing this town every single day, every single night. I am satisfied with the resources we have. I am satisfied with the way they are being deployed. I read every single incident report. Last year, we answered almost 58,000 calls for service. I read tens of thousands of incident reports. I know exactly what's going on in this town. I know where it's going on. I know when it's going on. And we are deploying our resources appropriately. We are aggressively policing this town, but unfortunately, we are simply displacing the problem. We are simply displacing a problem. We are looking to force it out of our town and force it somewhere else. I think, policing is one thing, but having your prosecutors, having your courts, having your correctional system, all the elements of the criminal justice system coming together and starting to support our efforts is really what is needed. That was the whole purpose of our meeting with the prosecutor the other day. One of the things that I wanted from him, and I do believe I got a commitment from him, was that we will seek to aggressively prosecute our car thieves. And yes, they are becoming more and more brazen. But our tactics here are addressing that. I can tell you in the first 4 weeks of this year, we've engaged in 4 high-speed pursuits once a week. We are engaged in pursuits once as recently as 2 days ago. We are engaging these criminals. We are chasing them out. Knock on wood, thus far this year, we have not had a vehicle theft. So I know our officers' efforts are producing results because I see the statistical data
Chief,
and I read
I'm
the
sorry,
reports.
can you just speak a little bit about deployment? Because I think he had referenced the idea of putting more officers at night in known.
Well, I will tell you,
gateways.
as I stated in my statement last week, we've reallocated personnel. We have more officers working at night presently, at least for this period of time when we're seeing an uptick in vehicle thefts. And we're continuing to aggressively deploy all of our resources, our patrol vehicles. We're adding 10 more license plate readers. We're looking to do interior locations of town. I can tell you 3 of the 4 pursuits that we've had thus far this year were a direct result of LPR hits for stolen vehicles entering our town. So I know what we're doing. I can tell you what other towns are doing and what they're not doing. And we are far more aggressive in our tactics here in Westfield in engaging criminals than they are elsewhere. So.
Thank you. Okay, with that, let's move on to bills and claims. Councilman Hapgood?
Thank you, Mayor. There was one comment that was made at the mic tonight, that Mr. Goodman. Can I just take a minute to?
Sure.
Because I feel like he had some questions that I have talked with him about before, but so I just want to assure Mr. Goodman and anyone else in the audience that we take the budget process very seriously and are working extremely hard to find new sources of revenue that come into our budget process so that we can control the amount of tax burden that falls on the property owners in town. That's a huge priority of ours, and so I just want to reassure you that the monies that increased the surplus this year, because we did actually report last week that we have a $15.4 million surplus at the end of 2023, which is the highest it's ever been in this town. And we intend to put those monies back to work for the taxpayers of Westfield. So I hope that that helps to address some of your concerns. We try to have as open and transparent a process as possible, not only in the budget, but in a lot of other things, which is one of the reasons that we have the meeting that we had last week as a review on the last year's budget and how the town performed against that budget, because personally, I feel it's very important that, we take the opportunity for our town administrator and the departments to talk about how they did with that budget, what we need for next year, hear from the residents to see what they would like to include in the 2024 budget. So I just wanted to make sure that your questions and concerns were addressed, Mr. Goodman.
Linda, can I add 2 things to that?
Of course.
So, Mr. Goodman, we have not talked about this, but we talked about other things. So I've been on the Finance Committee 5 of my 6 years on the council. Happy to be back on it this year. I think there's a data point that would be valuable, and I don't know the exact specifics, but the tax increases of our council, I think averages about 1.1.
Yeah, actually, it's closer to 1.1 over the 6 years.
1.1%. In the prior 6 years, before many of us were on this dais, it was closer to 2. So again, if you're looking for a council that is absolutely trying to manage our town finances effectively and keeping tax increases as low as possible, I think our track record does speak for itself, and that's what we absolutely will plan to and hope to do this year. As Councilman Kiefer and Damagala, who are joining us this year on the Finance Committee, know, a lot of the increases are out of our control. They're non-discretionary, so we do what we can to manage them and still deliver services and improvements in this town. So I think that's important, because I think that's a representation of the entire process, right? What is ultimately the tax increase? So I think that's important for the public to know. The second thing, I think it's helpful for you to know what in the world we do on the Finance Committee. We sit down with every department head and literally go through the budget line item by line item, and even talk about buying paper and paper clips. So that's why we spend nights and weekends doing this, hours of time, to make sure that your money is well spent.
Thank you.
I would just add one thing if I'm sorry, may I?
Yes.
Yeah, and just to piggyback real quick, I don't want to take any more time, but as David and Linda mentioned, Mike and I are new to the Finance Committee, and it's been fascinating to learn the inner workings of the town. And I just want to say one thing, which of course Jim touched on when you presented to the town, but I found very interesting, which is nearly 40%, or I think actually pretty much 40% exactly, of the town's budget does not come from property taxes. It comes from other sources. Now, some of that's revenue from municipal court and what have you, but a lot of it is from really interesting sources of revenue that are creative and put some good ideas to work. And so I think it's another thing that town people should realize is it's not just that every penny we spend comes right out of our pockets. We're really supplementing the property tax base in a lot of ways. So, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
And one of the
actually-
biggest things,
Well, I'm
you know,
glad to
what-
hear you acknowledge
yeah.
that, because we had actually made driving incremental revenue, non-tax revenue, is a huge priority to enable us to alleviate tax burden on taxpayers. So it's been a very concerted effort in the last 6 years. So thanks for acknowledging that. Okay, to bills and claims.
Yes. Okay.
Next page.
Yeah, I got it. I'd like to move bills and claims in the amount of $549,937.98.
May I have a second? Second by Councilman Mackey. Any discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? This motion is carried.
And I'll continue. I have 6 resolutions
sorry.
I'd like to move as a package. A resolution authorizing the CFO to draw a warrant for the Board of Adjustment escrow monies, a resolution authorizing the CFO to refund Recreation Department fees, a resolution authorizing the CFO to refund Police Department fees, a resolution authorizing the CFO to draw a warrant for unused parking permit fee, a resolution authorizing the CFO to draw a warrant for dog licenses for December 2023, and a resolution authorizing the CFO to draw a warrant for Health Department overpayment.
May I have a second? Second by Councilman Contract. Any discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Opposed? This motion has carried.
And I'd also like to move General Ordinance number 2024-03 on first reading, an ordinance to amend the Code of the Town of Westfield, Chapter 20.
May I have a second? Second by Councilman Dardia. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Councilmembers Havgood,
Yes.
Dardia. Yes. Damagala.
Yes.
Kiefer,
Yes.
Saunders,
Yes.
Armento.
Yes.
Contract. Yes. Mackey. Yes. Mayor Brindle.
Yes, this motion has carried. Last, well, that's you. Sorry.
I'll just do my last comment for tonight. I'd like to move General Ordinance number 2024-04 on first reading, an ordinance entitled, an ordinance fixing the salaries of certain employees of the police and fire departments in the town of Westfield and various amendments thereto.
May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman
Domingo.
Sorry, I gotta get these
That's
voices
all
right.
You raspy today, it's all right.
Apologize. Between the two of them, I'm trying to get it right. Sorry about that. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Councilmembers Hopgood,
Yes.
Dardia. Yes. Domagala.
Yes.
Kiefer,
Yes.
Saunders,
Yes.
Armenta. Yes. Contract. Yes. Mackey. Yes. Mayor Bindle.
Yes, this motion has carried. May I have a motion to adjourn? By Councilman Mackey, second.
Second.
By Councilman Dardia. All in favor?
Yes. Yes.
Opposed? This motion is carried. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you and good night, everybody.